Today, I'm talking to Jim. Suffering from hip arthritis, Jim had to retire from his active job. And simply changing his diet, Jim was able to become more active and unretire. And suddenly, other conditions that Jim had also been suffering with reversed. If you enjoyed this video, please click like and also subscribe. Additionally, please consider supporting me by becoming a channel member. You can click the join button under this video or the first link in the description. Let's meet Jim. How did you find Ketovore?
Well, I stumbled onto it after the pandemic. I had gained a bunch of weight, like so many people, and I was desperate to find a way to lose some weight that wasn't necessarily dependent on a whole lot of exercise, sort of exercising myself out of it. I wanted something better. And I've always heard about people losing weight on the Atkins diet. And I had one of my closest friends was a giant of a man, is a giant of a man. He's big. He's 6'4", and he was probably touching 400 pounds at one point. And he lost 200 pounds on Atkins. And so I thought if he could lose 200 pounds, I could lose 30 pounds. And then off it went. And I was just totally bowled over. I thought, I'd give myself a couple of weeks. And I was very reticent about getting on the scale. I finally get on the scale and I'm shocked that about 6 pounds was gone. Now I spent the last 2 weeks peeing quite a bit, but so I guess that was a lot of it, but the weight just flew off. And then all these other things started happening that I totally was not expecting. Besides the weight, I had so much more energy. I mean, and I could go through the entire day working around the house, working on my cars. I'm sort of a handyman at home, and this eventually led to me going back to sort of work and starting a marine survey business. And now I climb around ships, big cargo ships. I was recently on a A-class mare ship, 353 meters long. And as a surveyor, you have to look through every part of the ship, in the cargo holds up to the bow, the bridge, bottom of the engine room, a lot of climbing, up and down stairs, up and down ladders, going in and out of the cargo holes. And you have to be fit. And I had no problems, and the crew had problems keeping up with me. And it's just been a complete game changer in life. And I've got my pension now. All of a sudden, I have all this money coming in, and it's wonderful. My wife and I are having a wonderful time in life. I used to have these low energy periods. I've had them for years, decades. And my doctor said, it's probably some kind of hypoglycemia. And, but they never really diagnosed it as such. But that's just not a non-issue anymore. And it used to be, I'd get a period where a day or two I just was on my back. I was so tired. That's gone. And besides being more active, I've started playing squash again. The local YMCA has a wonderful squash facility, so I play squash 3 or 4 times a week. I go to the dentist, and he's like, "What are you doing? Your teeth and gums are fabulous." And interestingly, the last time I went, the hygienist is finishing up. It was about 10 minutes, if that. And she was finishing up with flossing. And she goes, "I don't understand it. Your gums aren't bleeding. What are you doing?" "I don't know. I eat a low carbohydrate diet." And she goes, "Oh, that explains it. All of our patients that are on low carb, none of them have bleeding gums." And so that's all, microvascular. I mean, it just goes on and on. I used to have high blood pressure. That's gone. I had high pressure in my eyes. They were saying I was going to get glaucoma. That's off the table now. Varicose veins, they've disappeared. Sharper vision. It's just,
And you were talking about arthritis as well. Did you have arthritis?
yes. Before the pandemic, 2019, I retired. I had a terrible hip arthritis and retired basically because my schedule wouldn't allow a surgery and the recuperation. It just got to be too much, but I was just so tired. I just said, the hell with it. And after the surgery, which was wildly successful, I mean, 3 hours after the surgery, I was cleared to go home. But I was just tired. I just said, I'm done. I can get my pension and let's just do it. But along with that, there are other aches and pains. They're
Yeah.
gone.
Right.
Gone.
So
No.
okay, so you retired, but you talked about you've started a business now.
Yeah, I retired, and then after I lost some weight, I started getting a phone call here and there to help out on a job, and I enjoyed it, and that just led to more jobs and more jobs. And these are jobs where they're very active. I might inspect a ship for an insurance company. I might inspect the tightness of cargo holes, so I'll have to climb into cargo holes and inspect cargo holes. It's an active job. This is not a job where you sit at a desk. You're driving to New York, driving to Philadelphia, somewheres, and you're climbing up accommodation ladders all over a ship, up and down ladders into cargo cranes. It's an active job, and I'm thriving in it. I'm just loving it.
And that's an interesting thing to say coming from someone who had hip arthritis and
Yeah,
was feeling tired all the time.
gone, just
Wow.
like that.
Yeah. So I've heard that as you're on a diet like this, testosterone levels improve, and testosterone is the thing that makes you actually want to work, to want to do things, to want to expend energy. Do you feel like your body actually wants to be that active now, actually
Oh,
wants to expend that energy?
absolutely. I
Mm.
I get up in the morning, sleep like a baby for one, and get up in the morning and get that cup of coffee, read that newspaper, check some emails, and just charge on ahead. I feel it's sort of like I was in my 20s or 30s. I don't feel any different. I might look different, but
That's really cool that your doctors and dentists are noticing things as well, like no bleeding gums and blood pressure is normalized, things like that. It's really cool.
it's was that first summer, summer of 2020. I had an episode with a varicose vein, and that's like Charles Manson moving to town, paying a visit. It was bloody, and so the next day I went to the doctor. I wasn't really familiar with what to do about it other than to bandage it up. And he noticed I'd lost some weight and my blood pressure was normal. And besides saying there's nothing he could do about the varicose vein, he asked about the weight. And I said, well, I'm on a very low carb diet. And he goes, oh, you got to be careful with that. It's very dangerous. And I said, what's dangerous about it? It's, I might not get diabetes. And interestingly, one of his nurses is large and type 2 diabetic with insulin. She told me she was taking insulin, and the last time I was in the doctor's office, she's slimmer, not taking as much insulin. And what are you doing? Oh, I'm watching my carbs. There you
Interesting.
go.
Interesting. But then if you go and talk to any doctor and say, see, she's reversing her diabetes, they would say, it's only in remission. It's only
Right.
in remission. Until she has a bit more sugar, it's only in remission.
Well, they are technically right. I mean, it will come back if you eat like that junk.
Yeah, they've got it on a technicality, right?
Yeah. But
So,
honestly,
yeah. So I just want to take a step back and talk about something that's completely not relevant to ketovore or something. When you were talking about measurements in the boat, you talked in meters. Why are you not talking in feet and stuff like that?
most of my career was with Maersk, which is a big international company, and this is a business where you do meters. You can do feet, but some ships, if I go on an American ship, they're actually kind of going into the meter range now too, as cubic meters and meters in length and that sort of stuff. It's if you're in a technical business, you kind of have to go.
I see. Okay.
Metric.
That was just a complete aside. I was just very interested in that.
I know where you're coming from.
How is your family with this? Like, are you married? And how's your wife? Is she joining you with this, or is she just kind of standing back and going, do what you want?
No, she's actually joined me, and she hasn't embraced it, but she's eating this way, and she's a marathoner. I've never been able to do marathons because of my work schedule, and but I've done lots of half marathons, and but she's a marathoner, and her performance is huge. I'm not allowed to say her age, but she does quite well because she's in her age group bracket. But she's qualified for Boston and New York, all of that stuff. She's very good.
Nice.
To be a Boston qualified runner is huge. I mean, there are people that run it as, if they're raising money, but to be a qualified runner, you have to be a serious runner. And she has eaten this way and seen her performance improve. And there's no question about it. Now, has she bought into it? Is she a member of the cult yet? No, but she knows it's been a huge benefit to her. Now, my children, they think Dad's crazy, and to a degree. My daughter, she's sort of on the cusp of, she plays with keto, low carb, but she goes to the gym a lot, and that makes a big difference. My two boys, I'm certifiable in their opinion.
Well, it's certifiable and healthy. It's certifiable and active. That's the important thing, right?
Well, none of them have friends whose dads are playing squash and doing all the work that I'm doing.
And squash requires some stamina, right?
Yeah, I'm not a good squash player. Matter of fact, I'm in a group of lousy squash players, but we have a wonderful time, and we get together 3-4 times a week, and we have what they call a Motley Monday, and then there's a Tuesday D League, and it's a lot of camaraderie. It's wonderful. The YMCA here has been, completely upgraded, and they put this 6-court squash center in. Actually, 7 courts, 6 singles, 1 double. It's fabulous, and in the squash community, there are a lot of old guys, and you can go on about the diet, but I think the number one thing is exercise. And if you're active, that's 50% of the battle right there. And then the Then you throw in the diet, keto, carnivore diet. And last week I was 100% carnivore and just loved it. And with the holiday weekend, Labor Day weekend, went off a little bit, but had some corn and stuff. But other than that, it's very low carb. And it's been wonderful. But I call it the triumvirate: exercise, keto, ketovore, and staying away from booze. And you're going to be healthy. You're going to sleep like a baby. You'll wake up refreshed and you'll be active.
Yeah, definitely. Just going back to what you said when you're talking about your wife doing the marathons, I think my personal experience with this way of eating has been that it's really helped with endurance. And I guess that would be helping her a lot with the marathons as well, I would imagine.
Well, you said it a lot better than I was trying to say it. And her endurance has really taken off. And she's definitely an older runner. And she's right up at the front of the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just constantly training. And when you run marathons, they typically talk about, carbo loading, but then you're going to bonk at mile 18. And that's because all your glycogen has been expended. And there's no more energy left. Well, she just sort of dances through that. That's just not an issue anymore.
That's awesome. What does a day of eating look like for you now? How often are you eating?
I get up in the morning, I have my black coffee, breakfast. Lunchtime, maybe I'll have some soda, take a little bit of a break, read the paper. Maybe in the mid-afternoon, I'll have a breakfast. I like having a breakfast sort of late in the day and between 3 and 5 o'clock. And that'd be 2-3 eggs and some smoked salmon or something. And then dinner is, chicken, beef, or fish. I live right near a very large fishing port, so we have wonderful seafood here. So we eat a lot of fish.
Oh, nice. And you have a little bit of vegetable on the side with the dinner, or
My wife's specialty is doing the salads. She makes these amazing salads, and I'll have half a cup of the salad or so, and then whatever we're having, a steak or a big piece of haddock or something like that. That's dinner.
Nice.
Last night I went out for dinner, and it's hard eating out, and so I ordered the steak, and I said, I don't want the potatoes. What? I don't want the potatoes? No potatoes. Would you like us to put extra vegetables? No, I don't want the vegetables. Just give me more meat. She wrote down on her little pad, this guy's certifiable.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of people, they kind of find it a little bit strange. Like, you don't want the decoration on your plate?
Right.
It's like you've ordered a Christmas tree without the balls and tinsel, It's You told me you went away last week, is that correct?
Yes, I had a survey in New Jersey, one of the refineries in New Jersey, on Friday. Drove home Friday night, and I have a camp on a very small island called Cutty Hunk. It's sort of between New Bedford and Martha's Vineyard, and you have to bring all your food out there. And so the family kind of met out there. We had a big holiday weekend over the Labor Day weekend. Wonderful
Nice.
time. And then, of course, it's a small island. After a couple generations, we're pretty much all cousins of each other. So it's a lot of family.
Nice. So, where is the diet going for you? Like, do you feel like this is just the way it's going to be forever now, or can you see yourself kind of changing things up at all?
Well, initially, went into this thinking I would just knock the weight off and then start adding in the carbohydrates. But every time I add in the carbohydrates, the weight goes up. And I'm quite comfortable with this diet. I really enjoy it. I mean, there's nothing like going to the store, getting a nice steak, slapping it on the grill, putting some butter on it, salt, pepper. That's all you need. It's pretty straightforward. And and it's and it realistically, if you're not eating that much, you're not spending that much either. You're not buying potatoes and onions and as green beans or string beans and rice. You're not buying any of that stuff.
Stuff that 50% of will inevitably go off in the fridge anyway, right?
Yeah, you throw most of that out. You got to trim this off, that off, all this prep. Half of it's gone, and then you know, no. This is a very simple diet. Coming from the maritime industry, I'm interested in maritime history, and I once saw an article about the menu on the Titanic. And of course, Titanic was, I don't know if they had refrigeration or if they used ice, but they didn't have much. And the menu was meat with, a little bit of a tiny bit of vegetables and maybe a little tiny salad, almost as for an ornament or something. But it's basically meat based. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And now you look at the progression from 1911 till now, where refrigeration has allowed fruit and vegetables to be shipped from all corners of the world to your store, so you can have, passion fruit from Pango for breakfast, and papayas and all of this stuff. And it's remarkable. But along the same lines, all this processed food that goes into bags, just proliferated and really hurting they're selling sugar is all they're doing. And it's a easy drug to sell.
Mm.
I mean, if you put cocaine on the shelf, it would probably sell pretty well too.
Right. So it's interesting that you talk about that as well, because there's so much in the news now about how cows are destroying the environment, and our addiction to meat is driving the world to the ends and all this kind of thing. And when you think about it, like all this fruit that we can eat any time of the year, like this is being shipped all around the world. All this processed food is being manufactured in factories that are producing all this waste and using all this energy. And it's like, who's actually wasting all the energy and destroying the environment? Is it really the cows?
Well, look at before the Europeans, the Americans and everyone moved west. Look at how many millions and millions of buffalo, covered this country. And the buffalo were actually on the East Coast. They went from coast to coast. But of course, the first thing we did was eat them. and so that was the end of the East Coast, the buffalo and the Appalachian Mountains. And but somehow that wasn't a big problem to the environment. Now you have a few cows, and it's a huge thing. And then, meanwhile, the broccoli grown in Mexico, and it's grown using fertilizers that come from crude oil. They're developed from crude oil, and then it's harvested with machines that are all burning diesel or some kind of fuel, and then it's cooled using some kind of energy that's petroleum based, and it's shipped on petroleum based, railroads and trucks, and refrigerated the entire time. And it's amazing they can make money at this, sell it so cheap. I mean, but there's a lot that goes into getting it up here, but none of it is environmentally conscious. Meanwhile, the ranch, the farm down the road has got chickens and steers, and I can go there, and I think they cost $1 or $2 a pound more than buying it at the supermarket, and I can get grass-fed steak, and I don't see a whole lot of petroleum went into raising that.
Right.
Eating grass,
Yeah.
maybe some hay that had to be harvested, but.
Yeah. So have you had anyone, any of your friends or any of your family kind of talk to you and say, look, what is it you're doing? I want in on this?
I've had a number of people that have said, how come you look so good? And one of my classmates college classmates, he's waiting for knee replacements, and he's I don't know if he's on insulin, but I know he's on metformin, and he just doesn't look good. And of course they're asking me, how come you look good? How come you're active? Everyone else is 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier, and I'm
They're
not.
like, yeah, they're like, I'm waiting for a knee replacement. You're
Going to play
climbing all
squash.
over ships.
Yeah, I'm on the squash league. We're going up to Providence to play in the squash team up there on Thursday. Yeah, it's completely different world.
So, I mean, when you look at when you contrast the two experiences, where do you think, and what we've just been talking about regarding, the push against meat and things like that, where do you think this is going? Where do you think we'll be in the next 10 or 20 years?
Dr. Westman I've seen him on YouTube, and he talks about this being a grassroots effort, and it's people like us that are teaching our doctors that this is not dangerous. My doctor was saying how dangerous it is, and I said, well, what's the biggest risk for heart disease? It's diabetes. So a diet that prevents diabetes should lower your risk to heart disease. And I think that makes a little sense, and I'm sure he's got to be careful, because the whole standard of care thing that doctors have to follow. But he's part of this group called MD or MDVIP, and their big thing is to provide testing services for people my age to keep them away from having heart attacks. But they don't push the low carb thing. They're saying, lots of fruits and vegetables and exercise. And I think exercise is the number one medicine. After that comes the rest. And If you're trying to keep your blood sugar down, obviously stay away from anything that's sugar based. Stay away from a sugar based diet. And I will say that looking at my lipid panel every year, it's always been an improvement. But it hasn't been a drastic improvement, which is the one surprise I've had out of this. But it's all very good.
Your LDL, you said your lipids are okay, so your LDL is not elevated or anything. Like you're not giving your doctor a heart attack because of the
Well,
LDL.
well, I went into this worried that a pat of butter, my eggs getting cooked in a pat of butter was going to send me to was going to send the ambulance to pick me up and take me to the hospital. But what I found was, and I'm kind of engineering oriented, so I love numbers. My LDL didn't change, hasn't changed a bit. My HDL has gone up, and my triglycerides went down. And so this triglyceride to HDL ratio is like 0.6 or something. You want it below 2. So I think I'm doing good. But the LDL hasn't changed. I'm actually in a cut right now. And when I want to knock off 10 pounds, once I get that 10 pounds off, I'll check my LDL again. I wonder if that's going to change.
So the doctor can't even, when the doctor's saying, "Oh, you got to be careful of low carb," he can't even get you on the lipids, right? So
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? You want me to lower my A1C more? It's going the wrong direction. Everyone tells me it's supposed to go up. Now, earlier I mentioned that I had these hypoglycemic episodes. 25 years ago, my wife said, "You got to talk to a doctor." So I go to the doctor. He goes, "Well, I'll give you a glucose tolerance test." What's that? Something to do with diabetes. And I completely blew it off. I didn't think that that was going to be an issue for me at all. The following week, I got one of those phone calls from the nurse saying, we have your test results and the doctor would like to review them with you. You don't want that kind of a phone call. And this is late 90s, I guess. And so I go in and he says, "Well, sucks to be you. You're pre-diabetic." And I said, "Well, my A1C is normal. What's the deal with that?" He goes, you failed not failed, but the glucose tolerance test indicates you're pre-diabetic. Well, what do I do? There's nothing to be done. Eventually you'll go on diabetes medicine, and after that you'll go on insulin, and that's the way he laid it out. Nothing to be done, and that certainly is not on the table anymore.
So it's so interesting. Sorry, my mute was I lost my mute button again. So he it's almost like it's just inevitable.
Yes,
you can't do anything about it. That's just
nothing.
life. Sucks, but we all go through this.
How many of our generation had parents with diabetes? That was unheard of. Heart disease was unheard of, and
that's
maybe
a really
not in
good
the 60s,
point.
but
that's a really good point.
Nobody had diabetes.
We didn't grow up with people around us with diabetes, right?
No. Heart disease was an issue, but diabetes was not an issue, and to be honest, obesity really was a rarity. And I think the jury's still out on exactly what has caused that epidemic. I don't think there's any one thing. People talk about this being an issue with seed oils and refined carbohydrates and all of this stuff. But, 50 years ago, you just didn't have the choices in the supermarkets. You didn't really snack between meals. I think it's just a whole slew of things. I mean, there was no
So,
Coca-Cola in our house. I mean, getting for my mother to bring Coca-Cola home, I mean, she'd have to carry it. I grew up in New York City, so there wasn't any getting into a car and loading it into a car. It was, well, you had a little cart and you'd have to, and then stairs. So you, you know, she didn't buy anything that was extra because it meant, it was a lot of carrying. And I think that was quite common. Nowadays, you load your car up and off you go. I mean, the idea back then of a half gallon of milk, unheard of. I mean, maybe an institution would have it, but normally it was like in a quart container.
So what's a half gallon? That's about 2.5 liters, something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, it's about let's see, yeah, 2 quarts,
Wow.
4 quarts to a gallon, 4 quarts to
Yeah.
a gallon. So half a gallon would be 2 quarts, but
Mm.
you didn't have the proportions that you have now. They've just been scaling everything up. The Slurpees, years ago, the Coca-Cola was in an 8 or 10 ounce bottle. Now you get them in 16, 24 ounce bottles. I think there's just a slew of reasons why we've gone into the prevalence of all of this sugar everywhere as you go, and they're just pushing sugar. And if you're in business of selling food, you want to push the sugar. It's profitable.
So you just reminded me of a comedian when you were talking there. So you not you personally, they're just something you said. So you mentioned you've got some Scottish background. Is that?
Oh, well, I'm like a lot of
Okay.
the U.S. We're what they call Scotch Irish,
Okay.
and which is they're Scots that went to Ireland and then came to North America in the colonial times. And you go into the mountains where my family's from, and everybody has a Scottish name and tans poorly.
Have you ever heard of a comedian called Billy Connolly?
Yeah, he's a
So he had a bit years ago where he was talking about this kind of thing, like the sizes of food it just gets bigger, and how now when you go out, like you can get everything in a bucket. It used to be a cup size. It used to be a small cup, and now it's a bucket. And he says a bucket is a measurement of farmyard animals. This is the kind of thing you hook around your ears and you eat out of. This is not, humans shouldn't be doing this.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's we don't need to eat that much. And if you cut the carbs, you just automatically don't eat that much.
Yeah, that's right. And that really is the secret, right? Just cut the thing that's driving the eating, and then it all stops.
Yeah.
It's like it's just putting the brakes on without you having to think about it.
Right. Yeah. They without exactly. Like I mentioned, I don't really have breakfast. I don't really have lunch. I like something in the afternoon because if I do the 1 meal a day thing, I'm pretty hungry by dinner time. So I have a couple eggs or something in the afternoon, or some chicken. Take some leftovers.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's amazing in and of itself that you can go until 3 o'clock in the afternoon and not feel like you need to eat until that point. It's really cool. Yeah.
No, it's years ago you had to have, in the Merchant Marine, we have our breakfast 7:30 to 8, and then 10 o'clock you have your coffee break, and there's coffee and something to eat, and then you have your lunch, and then 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you have your coffee break with something to eat. And then 5 o'clock, you're eating dinner. And then there's a night lunch. So quite a few meals.
So basically, you're going to stick with this diet going forward. Do you have any other goals as far as, your business or, getting more into exercise, doing anything more with more competitive with squash or anything like that?
Absolutely. I don't know how busier I want to get with the business, because I'm at a level where I'm busy, slightly more than busy enough, and it's not about the money. It's about you know challenge and all that other stuff, ownership, and feeling a success and moving ahead. I'd like to get back into running. I used to do a lot of half marathons, but since the hip arthritis, it hasn't come back. But I definitely want to take the squash up to the next level.
And so, Jim, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any social media that they can get in touch? Are you on YouTube or anything like that?
Oh, no. No, I'm just regular Joe.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, I've enjoyed this, Dave. Thank you so much.
Guys, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.